Okay. Perhaps we can have kelompok 1 to present first.
Kelompok 1 about infrared heating technology.
Infrared.
Okay. Siapa kelompok 1? Kalau tidak salah Naufal.
Oh ya, ini presentasi lagi, katanya di record ya, Bu?
Yes, dari record. Jadi silahkan siapa yang akan memutarkannya.
Oh, di share screen, oke.
Oke.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome everyone to Group 1's presentation about infrared heating technology. So what is infrared? We're going to talk about it. And for the members, there are Syafana Bila Putri Sampurno, Senjala Kausar, me, Nova Ramadan, also Silvina Nursiti Syahwa. And first, for the infrared technology will be explained by Syafana.
Infrared heating technology utilizes the invisible electromagnetic waves from the light spectrum to generate heat. Unlike conventional heating, which heats the air around an object, infrared heaters directly heat the object itself. How does infrared heating work? Infrared heaters generate heat through heating elements that contain metal and ceramic filaments. When an electric current is passed through these heating elements, they emit infrared radiation. The wavelength of infrared radiation determines the type of heat produced. First is short wave infrared. The 1 to 2.5 microns produces intense heat ideal for rapid heating and drying. And second is medium wave infrared, which is 2.5 to 5.6 microns. Produces more comfortable and uniform heat, suitable for room heating and large areas. And third is long wave infrared, which 5.6 to 100 microns. Produces gentle and easily absorbed heat, ideal for application where intense heat is not required, such as heating food and heat therapy. Next.
Okay, next for the design of infrared technology. So basically, it utilizes in two main sources: electric heaters and gas-fired heaters. And electric fired heaters, it's around 1,100 to 2,200 Celsius, and for the gas, it's around 343 to 1,100 Celsius, and they emit infrared radiation with wavelengths ranging from short to long. And depending on the efficiency, so basically like infrared heaters ranges from 40% to 70%, while gas-fired heaters have an efficiency of 30% to 50% and emit medium to long wavelengths.
Infrared heating technology can be used in Indonesia. Why? Because infrared heaters are suitable for various environments and climates, including tropical regions like Indonesia. They can efficiently provide warmth and comfort in both indoor and outdoor settings, making them a versatile heating solution for homes, office, restaurants, and other establishments throughout the country. Infrared technology can be effectively utilized in food production processes in Indonesia for several reasons. First is energy efficiency. Infrared technology directly generates heat on the surface of the heated object without requiring heating of the surrounding air. This reduces energy loss commonly experienced in conventional heating systems, thereby enhancing overall energy efficiency. Second is process temperature control. Infrared allows for highly precise temperature control in food production processes. This is crucial to ensure the consistent of product quality and to avoid overcooking or undercooking. And the third is speed of processing. Infrared technology can expedite food production processes as heat is directly applied to the product, allowing for shorter processing times compared to conventional heating methods. And the fourth is product quality. In processes such as drying, pasteurization, and baking, infrared can help maintain optimal texture, flavor, and nutritional content in food products. And fifth is cleanliness and safety. Heating processes with infrared are often cleaner and more hygienic compared to other heating methods because they don't require heating media such as air or water, which can be sources of contamination. Therefore, infrared technology is a good choice for food production processes in Indonesia, as it can enhance efficiency, product quality, and safety, while reducing unwanted environmental impact.
Okay, next, so what in Indonesian cuisine that can be used for infrared technology? So we found a journal from Dwi Yustianto, Slamet Riyadi, and Siswadi. They made like they come up for like a grilling machine, infrared grilling machine, in Benowo District West Surabaya, which can like the capacity of 25 kilograms of satay, and you can look here. The name is satay grilling machine 262 infrared heater, which is fueled by LPG gas. So like basically the mechanism is equipped with new technology features that no longer use charcoal for the satay burning process. Which is like filled by LPG gas, and the infrared heater can have its temperature controlled via digital control. So which is connected to several other infrared components. The temperature produced by this infrared heater is optimal for food that is served through grilling. So talking about grilling, there are some other Indonesian food that can be used, such as sate lilit. Sate lilit is basically a Balinese Balinese food that uses like serai, and the meat is basically it can be pork or chicken that being processed. And next is sate buntel. It's kind of the same with sate lilit that it's basically a wrapped meat. Sate buntel is from Solo. You can search it and it's really good. And next, it's for the non-Muslims. It's a babi panggang. And next is the most common one for grilling. It's ayam bakar. Also, an interesting fact, there's an infrared product as well in Bandung, and it's called Zugala Roastery. You can search it in Google Maps. Uh, so basically, Zugala has introduced an innovative infrared coffee roasting machine that uses infrared heating technology instead of traditional fire or gas. This infrared roaster offers several advantages over conventional roasters. So basically, it roasts coffee beans without an open flame or gas, providing a cleaner and more controlled roasting process. Infrared heating allows precise temperature control, which is crucial for achieving the desired roast profile and for flavor development in coffee beans. The infrared roaster can roast coffee beans evenly and consistently, resulting in superior flavor quality compared to traditional roasting methods. And next.
Food safety against use of infrared heating technology. The application of infrared heating technology in the satay grilling process has several issues related to food safety. The first one, use infrared technology in the satay grilling process can replace the traditional method of burning using charcoal because it does not produce residual combination results so as to improve hygiene and reduce the risk of contamination. And second, infrared heating is effective in heating the surface of the food so that it can kill pathogenic microorganisms because usually traditional heating can only heating a few millimeters below the surface of the food. And the last one, temperature control system in infrared heating allows setting the temperature according to the characteristic of the heating material so as not to damage the content in the material.
To convince Indonesian consumer and entrepreneur to adopt infrared non-thermal heating technology in the food industry, a comprehensive approach highlighting in benefit while addressing potential concern is necessary. The first one, we emphasize the benefit of this technology for food safety and quality. Infrared heating efficiently inactivate microbes, ensuring safer food product. The second one is tangible evidence of increased production capacity and efficiency will be demonstrated. Data and case studies show that infrared heating processes larger quantities of food in a shorter time, leading to increased production capacity. Third, sustainability and environmental benefit are highlighted. Energy efficient infrared heating reduce carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emission. This aligns with Indonesian goals of reducing reliance on non-renewable energy resource. Fourth, we will conduct demonstration and pilot project to directly familiarize consumer and entrepreneur with this technology, collaborating with local food product to showcase a successful real-world application. Fifth, government support and incentives will be pursued. We will engage with relevant agencies to promote the adoption of this technology as a part of national food safety and sustainability initiatives. Lastly, concern about initial investment costs and the learning curve associated with new technology will be addressed by providing comprehensive training from implementation to proper maintenance of infrared heating system.
Okay, so these are the BPO Glyphris, and we got it like a year ago, like 2023, like the Zugala and the grilling machine. So it's basically pretty new. Okay, and thank you for seeing our presentation. If you have any question, you can drop it in the comments. Thank you. Sorry if we have a lot of mistakes in this presentation. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, maybe kelompok 1, all the member can open camera so we can see the face of all member. Okay. And then Senja and Silvina. Okay. Okay. Now we have a section discussion. Okay. Maybe
Okay.
first from Dr. Nadia.
All right. Okay, so I've seen that you guys have review on satay roasting and coffee roasting, right? Satay grill and coffee roasting. All right. I have 3 questions. The first question, what will be the key parameters that you need to control in order to perfectly grill your satay? What are the key parameters needed to be controlled okay, in order to grill your satay. Okay, let me give you guys the question first, and then maybe perhaps you can discuss among you guys on how best to answer my questions. Okay. Question number 2, how to ensure energy efficiency and uniformity of heat distribution during satay grilling. Okay. And then last question will be, what are the benefits and the potential drawbacks of using infrared heating compared to the traditional way of grilling your satay in terms of flavor, texture, and of course, nutritional value. Okay, I'm posting the question on the chat box so you guys could see it. Okay. So
Okay, I understand the question, and should I answer it right now?
sure, no problem.
Okay. And for the first question, it's like what will be the key
Key
parameters?
parameters.
Yeah, key parameters for the that need to be controlled in order to grill the satay. So satay basically is using the meat, right? And for the first time, like using the meat, you need to use the fresh and high quality meat for the satay, of course, and for to ensure like the tenderness and the good flavor of the satay. And okay, and for the basically in the grilling one, we're talking about the heat level, so I didn't like explain to you like the detailed one for the heat level. So basically it's around like 400 degrees or about 200 to 30 to 200 to 230 Celsius, like for a good sear and cook. Like it can be adjusted slightly based on the thickness of of the satay. So the infrared, I think it kind of explained the the third question as well. So basically the grilling method for this satay um is more convenient. It's better than the charcoal one because it's the infrared. It's basically you can as I said before in the presentation, you can control the heat, not like the charcoal one where you need to stabilize the charcoal with the fan. If you know what I mean. So yeah, you can control. So it's not really can overcook the satay, like depending on the thickness and heat level. And with the infrared one, I think basically you need to preheat the infrared grill first to ensure the cooking method to be better. Um, I think that's it for my answer. What about my friends? I guess I have any addition to my answer, or that's it?
Okay. Anyone who would like to add to that? If you like to answer in Bahasa, is also okay with me, right? We're just going to discuss on what you guys have learned and what are your on your presentation. So please do not hesitate. Okay. To me, what Naufal just answered just now is correct to a certain extent, but I think there's more to add. So if you guys would like to add, so please do so. Okay.
Anyone? Maybe Safa, Senja, and Silvina?
I think I want to add some answers
sure.
for the question number 2. The key parameter that I know for infrared heating is the wavelength. So there's like approximate temperature.
Yes.
Approximate wavelength for grilling food in infrared. It's like, I don't know, like 0.7 microns until 1, and then some temperature control too. And for the meat, that is grilled in infrared heating,
Mhm.
it will be good if we control the temperature. Like we can use the meat thermometer to ensure that the temperature that we need to reach is. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Shafa. I think what you have said is true, but one question. Oh, remember you guys have presented on the short wave, the medium wave, and the long wave. Which one is it that you guys use for satay? Which one is the best wave to use for grilling satay? Is it the short one? Is it the medium one?
It's a short wave range, Miss.
Short wave. Okay, suitable for surface and near surface heating. Okay, and then you guys would add data logger, temperature logger to control the temperature, right? To make sure the internal temperature of the meat reach to a certain level, correct? Okay, right. What I would like to add, another thing is that sometimes we only look at the technology on the technological part, but we forgot to add, we forgot to look at from the food properties. Okay. In this case, when you are using infrared technology to grill your satay, you need to make sure the moisture content of your satay meat first, because high moisture content would absorb higher infrared energy. Okay, and obviously would affect on the heating rates. So what I would think is that if you were to have a satay that is very moist, okay, sometimes it will cook on the outside faster, but the internal part has not reached the right temperature yet. So yeah, moisture content is quite important that you need to look into. That is one part of it. Another part of it is, of course, you need to look at the thickness and the density of your meat. Like when you're talking about satay I think satay lilit, the one from Balinese. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you need to make sure the thickness of that satay lilit.
yeah, that's
Yes, that is one part. We always look at the technological part, or we forgot about the food part of it. Okay, so that is something that we need to. But another thing is that, interestingly, when you cook satay using the traditional method, using the charcoal, usually have kipas kan, like
yeah.
untuk increase the airflow. But what about using infrared? Do you need to use kipas also? Just to increase the uniformity of the heating techniques.
For the infrared
Yeah,
or
for infrared, yeah.
mm,
Or
no,
it's
no,
not it's not
no, it's not.
needed.
No, it's not
It's not
needed.
it's
You
not
can
needed.
control the heat. So one of the benefits is that you can control the heat and
Uh-huh.
the uniformity is compared to the
Okay.
charcoal that using the kipas is that. Yeah.
Okay. But I still feel that by using kipas would
Mm.
helps to cook for your satay to cook evenly,
Okay.
regardless. Yeah. It is still needed in certain part, especially for satay. But what about the drawbacks or the disadvantages of using infrared to normal type of cooking? Do you think there will be an effect to the flavor? Because selalunya satay, ada orang suka bau charcoal tu ya, like arang-arang kan,
Smoky.
smokiness,
Yeah.
correct.
Oh yeah, this one.
But kalau using infrared, would there be any smokiness?
I think based on the heat, like it's not as high as the charcoal one. I mean it's good to have a really tender and a really good taste of the satay, but not the smokiness.
Not the
Uh,
smokiness.
yeah, not the smokiness like in terms of the charcoal one.
I think really depends on the preference of your
Yeah,
consumer.
the preference. Yeah.
But I think the best way, when you are talking about promoting satay that is using infrared, one aspect that you can focus on is the carcinogenic. Do you know carcinogens? Carcinogenic. Oh, sorry. Let me type it here.
Carcinogen.
Yes,
Carcinogen.
carcinogenic. Okay, this what happens is that when you use satay, you used to grill satay with the fat content attached to the meat part, and that that fat content, when we grill them on top of a charcoal, it will melt. So and then it will touches the charcoal, and then that charcoal itself would dissipate in terms of smoke, and then it would goes to your satay, correct? And that part of the satay would be considered as carcinogenic. So I guess in another way to promote infrared heating for satay grilling to the consumer and everything, then maybe perhaps you can say that this one does not produce any carcinogens, no? So that is one part of it. Okay, it's good that you touches on the food safety and the hygiene, because by using charcoal sometimes it could be messy, and there's a lot of apa dipanggil arang dekat grill section, so nanti your food is not a bit, is not hygienic kan, but so you have touched on that part, so I think that's good. Okay, but one comment I need to make is that your slide has too many words. And there's one part where you touches about on the heater usage on the environment. I think that one macam a bit out of topic for the food processing part. Okay, so just that part. But everything else is okay. I think you guys have touched on that part. Have answered. So thank you very much, group kelompok 1. I think you guys have done quite well. Okay. And satay is a good example of Indonesian cuisine that I would like to see. So yeah, infrared is a way to go. And another part, maybe we can look into more on the coffee roasting part. Okay, all right. Thank you kelompok 1.
Oke, terima kasih kelompok 1. Oke,
Okay, may we have kelompok 2?
kelompok 2 is about ohmic heating.
Ohmic heating, all right.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, the member is Jesse, and then who else? Jesse, kemudian
Fadil and Aina.
oh okay.
Fadil and Aina.
Okay, Fadil and Aina, maybe will share screen for the presentation. Mungkin bisa dikoordinasikan, Jesse, antara anggota kelompok yang lain, Fadil atau Aina bisa
Sebentar Ibu,
membantu?
iya Bu.
Oke, iya.
iya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 2. Today we will present about the influence of voltage variation in the Ohmi heating-based pasteurization process on the characteristic of Sumbawa white horse milk. Our group consists of 3 members. First, Aina, Fadil, and myself, Jessie. We will cover the introduction, theoretical background, discussion result, and conclusion. Further details will be presented by my colleague. Please, next the slide.
Okay, this slides I will go to introduce by Ohmi heating. Ohmi heating is an alternative technology that can be used in a high temperature extrusion process. Ohmi heating is a process where electric current is imposed through food material. Ohmi heating is based on alternative current flow, also known as an AC current. AC voltage is applied to both and the electrode. The principle of the Ohmic heating is based on the Joule's law, which states that the heat generates a conductor is proportional to the square of the electric current, the resistance of the conductor, and duration of of the current flow. Next. Advantage of heating heating is a speed or relative uniform heating system, including for liquid solid product. This reduces the total amounts of heat content with the product compared to conventional heating, which requires for time for heat penetration to center on the material and heat solid materials slower than fluid. However, a drawback of this heating method is that it still cannot to be applied large solid food material. I will be the introduce of the journal. Sumbawa besar terpasat with Sumbawa Island, Indonesia. It is a potential in livestock farming, particularly what is unique bred horse reproduce high quality wild horse milk. However, the population of the horse has been declined, and the traditional methods of the processing this milk is not optimal. The introduction of the milking is as a pasteurization method can provide a bit efficient and uniform heating process, potentially improving the quality and production of of real horse milk. Okay, next.
Next is theoretical framework. Ohmi heating, also known as Joule heating, is a process where electric current passes through a conductive material, generating heat due to the material's electrical resistance. This method is highly efficient for heating liquids and semi-solid foods uniformly, as it directly converts electrical energy into thermal energy within the material. Ohmi heating is widely used in food processing to preserve nutritional quality and improve safety by reducing the risk of overheating. Next is pasteurization of milk using the ohmic heating method. Wild horse milk from Sumbawa Island is recognized for its high nutritional value. Unlike cows, horses lack a rumen, leading to different digestion and metabolic processes that influence the chemical composition and physical properties of their milk. The chemical compositions of wild horse milk from Sumbawa show similarities to other horse milk composition, with lactose content at 6.48%, protein at 1.81%, and fat at 1.67% percent, and can yield up to 3 liters per horse per day. Despite its nutritional benefits, the milk's sour taste has reduced consumer interest.
necessitating innovation in processing to create a more appealing product for wider consumption. Next is the result. The result, first of all, the result is analysis of electrical conductivity. Electric conductivity is a crucial parameter in ohmic heating. The rate of heat generated during ohmic heating correlates directly with electrical conductivity at a constant temperature gradient, impacting heat transfer efficiency. Different voltage treatments affect conductivity values and material characteristics. Electrical conductivity increased linearly with applied voltage. In the heating process, milk subject to 80 volts exhibits lower electrical conductivity compared to milk under 100 volts, thus the relationship between current and temperature is linear. As temperature increases, current values also rise with conductivity values, increasing more rapidly alongside temperature increments. The second result is temperature change. The heating rate of the material determines the success of the ohmic heat treatment applied in food processing. Ohmic heating involves passing an electric current through electrically conductive food materials, generating heat internally due to the resistance and dissipation of electrical energy. The duration of ohmic heating is influenced by the voltage gradient applied, where higher voltage achieve the desired temperature more quickly. For instance, reaching an optimal temperature of 90 degrees Celsius takes 2 minutes 15 seconds and 80 volts compared to 1 minute 40 seconds at 100 volts. During the heating process, the temperature of milk subjected to voltage ranging from 80 to 140 volts increases linearly due to the efficiency heating of cellular tissues through ohmic heating, correlating directly with the voltage gradient applied.
For result organoleptic test, so the panelist's preference for the color of pasteurized while horse milk treated with a ohmic treatment do not significantly different between treatments. The organoleptic testing conducted by 20 panelists yield results that were not significantly different. This proves that different voltage treatments do not significantly alter the color, taste, and aroma product. For result pH, different voltage treatment affect the pH of milk products. Data results were obtained that show that the value of pH control after undergoing proportional treatment real with ohmic treatment compared to 100 volt and 140 volt treatment not compare real while the treatment 80 volt and 120 volt compared to real. Acidity degree of with ohmic heating pasteurization still eligible quality of Indonesia National Standard or SNI in 1998 that the acidity degree of milk range from 6 or 7. Based on the result of the research obtained indicates that the voltage treatment has a significant effect on the average value of total dissolved solid products by wild horse milk in 7,50 or 8,97 range. The treatment control in markedly different from the treatment of milk. total value of this solid on treatment of milk higher than the control treatment. This due to the control treatment using relative time to reach the optimum temperature of 90 derajat Celcius. For conclusion, the research identification that higher voltage in humid heating for pasteurization reduce the time need to reach the optimal temperature of 90 derajat Celcius. At 140 volts, that quick time record was 1 minute or 1 minute 5 seconds, 5 seconds, and shorter than the longer duration required by the control treatment. Electrical conductivity increase linearly with temperature, with value varying depending on the applied voltage. Ohmic treatment at high voltage, such as 140 volts, show the lowest yield but minimize weight loss due to rapid pasteurization. And organoleptic testing indicate no significant change in sensory quality of wild horse milk after ohmic pasteurization. The parameters observation in this study were a pH, conductivity, total dissolved solid, and yield before and after pasteurization using ohmic heater, while current measurement and time calculation were carried out during the pasteurization process. This is the bibliography.
Yes, here are the reference we use. That concludes our presentation on ohmic heating of Sumbawa wild horse milk. We apologize for any mistakes and hope it was beneficial. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. That is very interesting. I do not know that you guys there's Sumbawa horse milk. Here in Malaysia, I think it's very rare to find horse milk. I'm not one for mass produce. I think maybe because of the tropical weather in Malaysia, I think Indonesia maybe is a bit different. Maybe you guys are Sumbawa is in where? Which part of Indonesia?
West Nusa Tenggara or
Oh,
Eastern from Bali.
so is it a highland like kawasan gunung atau
Oh.
bukit? Bukan.
Ada gunung, ada laut.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So maybe perhaps because of the temperature and the temperament, the weather climate there maybe is sufficient for horse production, for horse breed. The issue with Malaysia is that we have a lot of flat lands, so we could not cultivate horse production, especially for milk, because the weather is quite hot. They cannot produce milk. So we have tried to brought in horses and dairy cows from overseas to breed here and to produce milk. But the thing is, they are hot because of the humidity, because of the weather, and they cannot produce milk. So one of the solutions is that they put all the cows inside an air conditioning farm. So yeah, so it cools off, and then they are quite happy. So then they can produce milk. The cows are like human too. So when they are not happy, they're not producing any milk. So yeah, it could be more or less of the Sumbawa horse. Okay, I have 3 questions. But before that, I have one comment. Again, too many words on your slide. I think you could improve on that. Maybe put on more pictures and infographic. Okay. All right. Let me put up the questions onto the chat box. Okay, I have 3 questions. Number one, you forgot to mention the health benefits of Sumbawa horse milk. What are the differences between the horse milk and the normal cow milk? Okay. Number two, what are the milk properties that may affect depasteurization using ohmic heating? Okay, you guys have mentioned it's good that you guys have referred to a journal that have done this technology onto a house milk. And I've seen the result of it. It's quite positive and it's very good. So I want to know what are the milk properties that may affect, because you have discussed on the technological aspect of it, but what are the milk properties? Okay, number three, in your opinion, can ohmic pasteurization lessen the bitterness of Sumbawa horse milk? Because you have mentioned in your slides that Sumbawa horse milk has a bit of bitterness to it. So can ohmic heating used to reduce the bitterness of that horse milk? In your opinion, not necessarily right or wrong, we just are discussing. Okay. Right. If anyone would like to answer any of those questions.
Maybe Fadil, Jesse, and Aina.
Yeah, anyone
Need
of you?
time, maybe.
If you want to answer in Bahasa, it's also can. Okay, no worries. I will not deduct any marks, don't worry. Okay. As long as you answer them, I will give you marks.
It's time they have to learn to answer in
To answer in English.
in English.
Yeah. One thing is that you have to practice all the time to speak in English, and then it will be, you know, second nature to you. Right? Okay.
Mau mau nyoba jawab question 1 ya, Ibu.
Ya,
Sis.
boleh.
Kalau dari jurnalnya itu sendiri, susu yang Scuderia Sumbawa ini tuh justru lebih baik daripada proteinnya lebih tinggi daripada susu kedelai dan susu unta. Susu unta. Tapi komposisi lemaknya itu lebih rendah kalau untuk komposisi lemaknya. Nah, susu kuda liar ini juga memiliki nutrisi atau kandungan ini juga laktosa yang lebih tinggi juga daripada susu lainnya. Terus kalau buat untuk buat untuk kesehatan sendiri itu susu ini tuh bisa kayak ngebantu menetralisir
Signal maybe problem. Aina,
Yeah.
mungkin bisa diulang bagian health benefitnya.
Yes.
Oh, Ibu, maaf. Jadi itu susu semuanya itu kalau buat kesehatannya sendiri itu bisa memperbaiki karena buat orang yang sering konsumsi obat-obatan gitu, kayak sering minum obat, itu bisa membantu untuk tubuhnya kita gitu, Bu. Terus bisa memperbaiki sistem kekebalan imun tubuh juga. Terus kalau dari jurnal itu juga susu kuda liar Sumbawa ini memiliki antiinflamasi. Terus bisa juga karena kandungan proteinnya juga tinggi, itu juga bagus untuk pertumbuhan anak. Itu sih, Bu.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you, Aina. Tapi ya, kalau saya mau tanya satu, kalau kandungan lemaknya kurang, is it bagus atau tidak untuk kita? untuk for our health benefit. Is it good or not?
Sebenarnya bisa bagus sih Bu, bagus.
Bagus dari segi apanya? Dari segi apa? Like for I understand it's for health benefit. Lower fats mean kita konsum kurang lemak. Tapi konsum kurang lemak juga saya pun susah nak terangkan. Okay. What I was going to say, when you have lower fats, you would have lower cholesterol level too. So yeah, that is good. For adults, good to consume horse milk, but for kids, I think it may not be good because they would like to have higher fat contents. But thank you very much, Aina, for your answer. For question number 2, anyone would like to answer? Milk properties.
I'm going to try to answer the
Okay.
question number 2. Untuk question number 2, what are the milk properties that may affect the pasteurization using off-milk heating?
Okay.
Several properties of milk can affect pasteurization. First is electrical conductivity. Milk's electrical conductivity depends on its composition, particularly the concentration of ions like calcium and potassium.
Yes.
2 is viscosity. Milk's viscosity influence how easily it conducts electricity and how heat distributes within it during the off-milk heating. Higher viscosity may require adjustment in the process parameters to ensure uniform heating. Number 3 is protein content. Protein in milk, such as casein, can interact with electric fields during off-milk heating, affecting the overall heating pattern and efficiency. 4 is fat content. The presence of fat in milk can influence its thermal conductivity and thus affect the heating process during off-milk pasteurization. 5 is temperature. Initial temperature of the milk can off-milk heating relies on the generation of heat through electrical resistance. 6 is homogeneity. The uniformity of milk composition can impact the distribution of heat during off-milk pasteurization, affecting the overall effectiveness of the process. Maybe that's I want to say for question number 2.
Okay. Thank you, Jessie. Yes, you are correct. So protein, fat, and the composition of your milk, especially on the calcium, on the phosphate, composition of the milk will affect on the electrical conductivity. And another thing is on the viscosity. Yes, I agree with you. Thank you so much for that. Okay. Question number 3.
Thank you.
Question number 3, anyone would like to answer?
Maybe I will say so answer the number 3.
Okay.
Based on the result of the journal Sumbawa Horse Milk, the results show that there were no negative change in color, aroma, and taste. So, milk pasteurization cannot lead to bitterness of Sumbawa milk.
Okay, so it cannot lessen the bitterness. Okay, all right. Would that be all? Anything else? Tak ada ya? Okay.
Maybe the content, Dr. Nadia, the content which can make bitterness of Sumbawa horse milk. What kind of content? Senyawa apa yang menyebabkan
apa yang menyebabkan the milk properties,
Bitterness. Yeah.
bitterness. I I don't know. I'm sorry. So I was just reading their slides just now. So yeah, they mentioned that there's some bitterness to the Sumbawa horse milk. So yes, I was wondering whether omic heating can. Oh, is Jessie? Would you like to answer?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I want to answer at journal. They
Uh-huh.
said horse milk contains lactic acid bacteria, which can
Oh.
produce
Oh.
Which can produce?
Signal. Maybe.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay. Maybe can produce alcohol, maybe.
Could be.
maybe.
Oh,
Jessie, can you answer? So it
can you repeat?
produce. Yeah, repeat.
Oh, yeah. So the horse milk contains lactic acid bacteria,
Okay.
which can produce lactic acid during fermentation. If fermentation occurs for too long, maybe if the milk saved for too long under certain condition, it can lead to the production of bitter compounds. Jadi kayak jika disimpan mungkin semakin lama, dianya jadi bisa memunculkan rasa yang sedikit pahit gitu.
Rasa pahit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But did the journal mention omic heating has any effect on the flavor of horse milk? No. On the organolactic.
In verbal maybe not. Not, but maybe untuk dari omic heating ini sendiri, kalau semisalnya digunakan mungkin berlebihan atau seperti tadi kondisi penyimpanan tidak sesuai, jadi menyebabkan adanya dominan.
Bahan. Okay. Okay, interesting research. Thank you, Jessie. Thank you for answering. Thank you, Aina, and also Fadil. Thank you for your presentation. Congratulations. Okay, so but after this, maybe lessen the wordings a bit. Okay, make it more interactive. All right. Okay. Okay, thank you. May we have kelompok nombor 3? Kelompok 3. Number 3, yes.
About HPP.
HPP.
Member is Vicky, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Vicky, and then Frisil. Okay.
Saya izin share ya.
Oke. Silahkan.
Alright.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to those who watch this video. This time we from group 3 will explain about application of high pressure processing in Indonesia food. Okay, next. Before we will be explaining about HPP, this group member in our group 3. The first member is me, Iqbal Brian, and the second name is Priscilla Perawati, and the last name is Vidya Nur Aziza. Next.
First, the definition of HPP or high pressure processing. HPP is a food processing method that uses high pressure, approx 88,000 lb in or PSI, which equivalent to 6,000 atm, using heat or no heat, with the aim of inactivating microbes or modifying product attributes so as to improve product quality. As a comparison, if it is assumed that a pressure cooker or presto has a pressure of 30 PSI, then the HPP has almost 3,000 times the pressure. HPP is able to produce product with very minimal change. When compared to the thermal or hot process, HPP can produce products that are fresher and better in terms of appearance, texture, and nutrition. This is because HPP is able to increase shelf life and maintain the nutritional value and quality of food by inactivating microorganisms and denaturing several enzymes, but does not cause change in the organoleptic characteristic of the product. Next. Next slide. Next is how does high pressure processing work? The steel or plastic container. The container is introduced into the high pressure machine and water is added as a pressure transmitting medium. When the container is full, more water is pressed into the container by powerful pumps, forming the high pressure. The pressure is transferred immediately and produce a homogeneous effect throughout the product regardless of geometry and size. In standard commercial use of high pressure, with the desired effect being extending shelf life or inactivation of microorganism, processing typically occurs at 400 to 600 MPa for 1 to 5 minutes. High isostatic pressure inactivates foodborne microorganisms and spoiling enzyme in a few minutes, while minimizing the loss of food quality.
Next is about high pressure processing or HPP. In my opinion, high pressure processing or HPP is the most suitable non-thermal technology for widespread use in Indonesia due to the following reason. Number one, Indonesia has a diverse range of food products, many of which are susceptible to spoilage and contamination. HPP effectively inactivate harmful pathogens like Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria, significantly improving food safety and reducing the risk of foodborne illness. Number two, HPP can extend the shelf life of various food products, including ready-to-eat meals, fruit, vegetables, seafood, and juice, without the need for chemical preservative. This is particularly beneficial for Indonesia because Indonesia is a tropical country where food spoilage is a major concern. And then HPP prefers the nutritional value, flavor, color, and texture of food product. This is important for maintains the quality and appeal of Indonesian cuisine, which is known for its rich flavor and diverse ingredients. The next is important parameter for HPP. Number one is pressure level. The pressure level used in HPP typically ranges from 100 to 800 MPa depending on the type of food product and the desired level of microbial inactivation. Number two is holding time. The duration of the high pressure treatment also varies depending on the product and the target microorganism. It can range from a few seconds to several minutes. The last is temperature. HPP can be applied at low or ambient temperature, which is beneficial for preserving the quality of heat-sensitive food. This is a flow chart in HPP in dodol production. The start is ingredient prep. In ingredient prep, all raw material are gathered and prepared according to the correct measurement. And then mixing and cooking. Ingredients are mixed and cooked in a large cauldron over low heat until thickened and caramelized. The next is HPP treatment. The cooked dodol mixture is packaged in flexible HPP compatible containers. Containers are loaded into the HPP vessel. High pressure, approximately 400 to 600 MPa, is applied for a specific duration, 2 to 5 minutes. And then cooling and cutting. After HPP treatment, the dodol is cooled to room temperature. The cooled dodol is then cut into desired shapes and size. Final packaging is done in earthy container of wrappers. And the last is distribution and sale. Dodol is distributed to retailers and consumers.
All right. Next is about food security in Indonesia with the HPP high pressure processing. Linking high pressure processing to food security in Indonesia has several significant implications. Food security refers to the availability, access, utilization, and stability of substance food to meet the nutritional needs of the entire population. And here are several ways in which HPP can contribute to food security in Indonesia. And the number one is extending shelf life of local products. Whereas HPP can extend the shelf life of various local food products such as fruits, vegetable, fish, and processed food without sacrificing their nutritional and sensory quality. This is crucial in reducing post-harvest losses, which are a major issue in Indonesia. The next is reducing food waste. By extending the shelf life of food, HPP can help reduce food waste. Longer lasting food can be stored longer in households, market, and storage facilities, reducing the amount of food discarded to the spoilage. The next about increasing added value of agricultural products. There is HPP can be used to produce high quality processed food that can be sold at higher prices, adding a value to agricultural products. This can increase the income of farmers and food products in Indonesia, thereby enhancing the economic well-being of rural communities. The last about this supporting food safety. HPP or high pressure bursting is effective in killing pathogens without altering food quality. This is important for improving food safety, especially in areas that may have issues with with food contamination of like infrastructure for safe food storage and processing. Next. And the next is about convince consumer or business in Indonesia. Convince consumer of businesses in Indonesia to adopt high pressure processing comprehensive approach is necessary, focusing on education, demonstration of benefits, and addressing concerns. And here are some strategies to convince consumer of businesses in Indonesia. Number one is educational campaigns. For examples, it's like workshops and seminars. Organize events to educate producer, retailers, and consumers about the benefit of HPP. Highlight how is special for food quality, safety, and nutritional value. And the second example is collaboration with universities. Partner with academy institution and conduct research and disseminate findings and the advantage of high pressure processing. Maybe the other example is like media outreach, like use social media, television, radio, and print media to spread awareness, share a success story, scientific evidence, and expert opinions of high pressure processing. The second strategy is about demonstrate economic benefits. For example, is like case studies and pilot projects showcase successful case studies where a business have benefit from HPP in the terms of extend shelf life, request and increase market reach. Pilot project can demonstrate the practical advantage. Cost benefit analysis is just one of important to provide detailed financial analysis showing the long-term saving and potential revenue increase from adopting high pressure processing. And don't forget to highlight the risk costs related to food spoilage and returns. And the next is strategies is about highlight food safety and quality and safety assurance. Don't forget about this. Enhance HPP effectiveness in eliminating pathogens and ensuring food safety without chemical preservatives use endorsement for health others and food safety experts. And don't forget about quality preservation. Demonstrate through blind tests and comparison how HPP maintains the taste, texture, and nutritional value of food product better than traditional preservation methods. And the next strategy is consumer engagement. Sampling campaigns provide free samples, give some free samples of treatment of food high pressure processing product in supermarket, farmers market, and food festival to let consumer experience the quality firsthand. And maybe some people give testimonials and reviews. Use testimonial from early adopters and positive review from consumer to build trust and credibility. And the last strategies is incentivize adoption. For examples, is like subsidies and grants. There is work with government agencies to provide financial incentivize subsidies and grants for business adopting HPP technology. And maybe there's a partnership with equipment suppliers. There's negotiate with HPP equipment manufacturers for affordable financing option, training, and maybe maintenance packaging for local business. Okay, the next. And this is a reference of journal where we have collected and read will be explained about high pressure processing. Okay, next. Okay, right. Maybe that's all the explanation regarding about high pressure processing or HPP. If there is a word error in explaining, please forgive us. And thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you for your presentation. I will post my 3 questions in the chat box. The first one, I would like to know, will there be any effect on the physical chemical properties of dodol, maybe on the moisture content, on the viscosity, or the structural integrity? Okay, because dodol is a complex food, because it's not rigid, but at the same time it's not so slurry like juice. So it's a semi-solid product. So I was wondering, maybe could there be any issues or any effects on the moisture content itself? And number 2, different formulations, okay, like if you were to vary your coconut milk, your sugar, or use flour, will there be an effect on the HPP parameters, on the pressure, on the time? Do you think you would need to extend or maybe use higher pressure instead of a normal pressure? Will there be an effect on the taste profiling? Maybe, you know, will there be any rancidity because of the coconut milk, and then you put so much pressure on the coconut milk, so would there be any changes in terms of the taste? And finally, do you think it would be cheaper to produce dodol using HPP in comparison to the normal techniques, which is very labor intensive? Okay, so if you have, or any one of you like to answer this question, please do. Okay, no right or wrong, just we are just discussing on, you know, the possibility of using HPP on the dodol production.
Maybe give us some minutes to
You need you need more time to answer the question, you mean?
my friend with me to read the journal.
Or you need to refer to a journal?
It's okay.
Okay, Dr. Farah, I'm looking at, we only have 30 minutes left. Since kelompok 3 may need more time to answer this question, do you think we should proceed with kelompok 4 for them to present first?
Oh, okay. It's okay, Dr. Nadia.
Boleh ya? Okay.
Boleh.
Alright, okay, kelompok 3, I think Vicky, Vidya, and Priscilla, I will give you more time, okay, to answer this question. In the meantime, can we proceed with presentation of kelompok 4? Okay. because we only have like about half an hour more to go. We may
Yes,
not have
it
time.
is.
Yes, we may not have time to finish all. So yeah, can we move to kelompok 4 to present, and then we go back to the question and answering for kelompok 3 and kelompok 4 later on.
Okay. So please, kelompok 4, Kois and others about pulse electric field. Okay. Belum ada suaranya ya, Kois?
Belum ada suaranya, Bu.
Belum, mungkin settingnya.
It's Nurul Fauliyah, second Afifa Salsabila Rashwa, and last one is myself, Mahen Kois. The presentation will be begin at my team.
Okay, first I will explain about pulse electric field. Pulse electric field is a food processing technology that uses high voltage pulse of electricity to inactivate microorganisms in food products. Pulse electric field does not use heat to inactive microorganisms, so it is classified as a non-thermal technology. Next is about how pulse electric field working. Pulse electric field works by applying high voltage pulse in a short time, causing the cell of microorganisms to rupture and damage the cell membrane, leading to death. PEF processing applies in high voltage pulse, about 20 to 80 kilovolt per centimeter, with a duration of millisecond to microsecond to treat liquid food placed between two electrodes. Next is about advantage of pulse electric field in food processing. The use of non-thermal technology does not cause change in the physical, chemical, and organoleptic qualities of food products. The short usage time in PEF can increase the efficiency of food processing. PEF does not produce hazardous waste after use, making it environmentally friendly. PEF can extend the shelf life of food products, thereby increasing profits for the food processing industry. Next is about important parameter of pulse electric field in food processing. First is electric field intensity. This is the most important parameter. The higher the intensity, the more effective the inactivation of microorganisms. However, the maximum limit must be observed to avoid damaging the materials. Next is number of pulse. The more pulse applied, the higher the likelihood of microorganism death. Attention must be paid to increase in pulse to avoid high operational costs and potential material damage. Number 3 is pulse duration and temperature. Longer duration in PEF and higher temperature can kill more microorganisms. Next parameter is pulse waveform. The choice of electrical pulse waveform, such as square wave or exponential wave, and other should be tailored to the type of material and target microorganism. Number 5 is electrical conductivity of the product. Products with high electrical conductivity can achieve high effectiveness at low electric field intensities. And the last is electrode gap. The smaller the electrode gap, the higher the electric field intensity for inactivating microorganism.
Okay, for the example of Bose electric field in food processing is, let's take some industry in, at first one is at the milk industries. So unpasteurized milk process health risk due to bacteria like E. coli, Listeria, and Pseudomonas. Concern about that, about its impact on milk quality on consumer preference for fresh product have led to exploring PEF conservation. PEF is effective at reducing microbes in simulated milk and skim milk, but fat and protein involved can shield bacteria. Therefore, crucial to assess PEF ability to inactive bacteria in whole milk for a fair comparison with traditional method. And at the same time, in juice industry, there is data that compare a high intensity PEF, moderate PEF, and calculate term reference. So there is data that compare that things. Symbol this symbol is represent measured data lines represents the mean value and confidence interval estimate with the Gauss-Eyring model. In this study, we show that moderate intensity pulse electric field at 2.7 kilovolt per centimeter, and the sound is 15 sampai 1000 microsecond is a very efficient and easy to scale process to pasteurize. Taken together, the inactivation data indicate that the condition of E 2.5 kilovolt per centimeter and the time is 1000 micro S can be used as a PEF process for the preservation of liquid food product. The lower maximum temperature required and shorter holding time when compared to conventional thermal pasteurization process are expected to result is better product quality, which is subject of investigation in for the forthcoming publication.
Okay, next I will explain about non-thermal technology as a solution for food security in Indonesia. Pulse electric field or PEF technology can be a solution for food security in Indonesia in several ways. One, extraction of bioactive compounds. PEF is used to extract bioactive compounds such as piperine from chili jamu, Piper retrofractum valve. PEF can increase the permeability of cell membranes, helping the extraction of bioactive compounds more efficiently. Thus, bioactive compounds can be utilized as functional food additives to increase the nutritional value of food. 2. Food preservation. PEF also has the potential to be used for food preservation. PEF can damage the cell membranes of microbes such as bacteria and fungi that cause food spoilage, thus extending the shelf life of food. 3. Improving food quality. PEF can improve the texture and characteristic of food, such as increasing the extraction yield of food oil or juice. This can improve the quality and value of food products. 4. Environmentally friendly technology. PEF is a non-thermal technology that doesn't involve high heating, making it more energy efficient and environmentally friendly than conventional thermal technologies. Thus, PEF technology has the potential to provide solution to improve food security in Indonesia through increased availability of nutritious, functional food, food preservation, improved food quality, as well as more efficient and environmentally friendly technology. To convince consumer and business in Indonesia to adopt Piols electric valve or PEF technology, several approaches can be taken. One, massive socialization and education about the benefit, advantage, and safety of PEF technology through seminar, guidebooks, and other information media, technical training and mentoring for food entrepreneurs interested in adopting PEF to facilitate the transition to this new technology, research and development, cooperation with relevant institutions to prove the application of PEF on local food products and increase trust. 4. Government support through incentive regulation that accommodate the new technology, certification, and standardization of product produced with PEF to ensure safety. Summary, PEF can be used as a solution for food security in Indonesia. It moves microorganisms from several food without causing damage. The maximum limit of PEF parameters must be observed to avoid damaging the material, and PEF can adopt in Indonesia with support from all citizens, especially government and research.
This is our source to generate this presentation, and this is for our presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning.
Okay, Waalaikumsalam. Kelompok 4, I think your presentation is a bit general, that you are not focusing on any of the food production, but it's okay. I think there's susah saya mau cakap. Basically you're not answering my question. That's it. Tapi okay, I will give you guys questions a bit later on. Okay, can we go back to questions, question and answer for kelompok 3? Can anyone answer?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Let me answer the question number 1.
Okay.
But sorry, Dr. Nadia, I cannot turn on my camera because my connection is bad.
Is bad. Okay, no worries.
Wait, the question is. The question is, does high pressure processing affect the physicochemical properties of the dough, such as its moisture content, viscosity, and structural integrity? But there is some effect from the processing from the high pressure processing, but the extent and nature of the exchange depend on various factors, including pressure levels, pressure time, and the specific formation of the dough. But there is some effect. There's a such like I said about moisture, about water contents. In general, HPP doesn't change the water content of the dough significantly, but we search in some journal and some studies report a slight decrease in water content due to the compensation effect of high pressure and high pressure processing. The other effect is viscosity. Viscosity, high pressure processing can increase the viscosity of the dough, and that's it, making it thicker. Yeah, that is caused by protein denaturation and starch gelatinization under high pressure.
Yes.
From the effect of structural integrity, HPP have a effect. There is can change the structure of the dough, potentially causing change in the texture depending on processing parameter. The dough can become harder, denser, even undergo gelatin. Yeah. And we search and find the other effect of the processing the dough of high pressure processing and the color. In some case, HPP can slight change in the color of the dough, usually making it darker. And HPP generally doesn't have a negative impact on the taste of the dough. And in fact, and some studies show that HPP can improve sustained flavor due to the release of volatile compounds. And it doesn't not have a negative impact on the taste of the dough. And from yes, like that, maybe from the effect in the processing, high pressure processing. Yeah. Is it the answer from question number 1, Dr. Nadia?
All right, thank you very much. That is very true what you have said. So the summary of it is basically, in order for you to do an HPP processing on dodol, you need to check on all those physical chemical properties first to see the effect of it, and then only then you can do the optimization of the process. Right. Question number 2. Will anyone want to answer it?
Izin menjawab, Ibu, namun
Boleh.
menggunakan bahasa Indonesia.
Oke, boleh.
Untuk pertanyaannya itu, apakah perbedaan formulasi dari dodol bisa mempengaruhi parameter HPP? Menurut jurnal yang kami baca, adanya perbedaan dari formulasi dodol itu dapat mempengaruhi parameter HPP karena contohnya saja bila kandungan gula yang lebih tinggi mungkin dapat memerlukan tekanan yang lebih tinggi atau bahkan waktu perawatan yang lebih lama. Selain itu juga adanya perbedaan dari formulasi dari dodol itu bisa mempengaruhi atau mengubah tekstur dan juga komposisi keseluruhan dari dodol, yang mana nantinya itu dapat mempengaruhi bagaimana si matriks makanan merespon terhadap tekanan tinggi, nantinya akan berpotensi mempengaruhi efektivitas dari HPP dan memerlukan penyesuaian parameter. Dan juga untuk efeknya itu untuk pada profil rasa itu akan adanya sebenarnya untuk HPP ini tuh nggak terlalu mempunyai efek yang signifikan, yang cuman sangat minimal kepada rasa pada produk makanan khususnya di dodol ini ya. Namun tetap saja ada beberapa perubahan kecil yang terjadi karena adanya perubahan dari sifat fisik dan kimia dari bahan tersebut. Misalnya itu rasa manis karena ada HPP ini dapat sedikit meningkatkan rasa manis dodol karena adanya pemecahan molekul pati yang menjadi gula yang lebih sederhana. Selain itu untuk intensitas rasanya karena senyawa volatil tertentu itu kan bertanggung jawab atas rasa yang dilepaskan selama HPP ya. Sehingga hal itu tuh berpotensi menyebabkan profil rasa yang sedikit lebih kuat. Mungkin itu saja yang bisa saya jawab. Terima kasih.
Okay. In my opinion, I have never tried HPP on dodol, but in my opinion, I don't think it would affect on the taste profile. I think it will still be the same. There will be no rancidity because of the coconut milk. But however, I think consumer would know whether you have used HPP or the traditional method. I think the traditional method, because you're cooking it over open fire, you have that aromatics that come from the smokiness of that open fire. So yeah, maybe perhaps the uniqueness of dodol is missing if you were to use HPP, in my opinion. But another one that I would like to add on is that if you increase the sugar ingredients in dodol, it would increase the texture, the firmer texture of dodol. Meaning, kalau lagi banyak gulanya, lagi keras dodolnya. Jadi there should be a balance. Sometimes by using HPP, you need to have water to absorb the impact of the pressure. But having a lot of water would give you a very runny dodol, ataupun dodol yang tak akan jadi solid, dia akan jadi sangat berair. So there's always the balancing part that you need to do when you are using HPP in comparison if you were to cook it or using open fire. So that is my opinion. Okay. Last question. Do you think HPP will be cheaper to be adopted in comparison to the traditional method?
Saya izin menjawab dalam bahasa Indonesia juga ya.
Boleh.
Oke, untuk pertanyaan ketiga, apakah penggunaan metode HPP dalam produksi dodol akan lebih murah daripada metode tradisional? Jawabannya, kalau melihat dari peralatan dan instalasi, mungkin biaya produksi dodol menggunakan HPP ini akan lebih mahal karena melihat dari segi peralatan dan instalasi atau biaya investasi awal yang dikeluarkan akan lebih mahal, dan juga biaya operasional karena menggunakan konsumsi energi dan biaya perawatan yang juga secara terus-menerus dan mahal. Terus apabila melihat produksi dodol yang ada di Garut itu lebih banyak dalam skala menengah atau kecil, jadi masih jarang yang skala besar. Jadi metode tradisional masih metode yang lebih cocok karena skala produksi dodol di Garut masih skala menengah dan kecil, masih jarang yang skala besar. Begitu jawabannya.
Betul. Another thing is, I think the best way is just to minimize the usage of labor. Maybe you can invent easy cooker, you know, the cara masakkan secara otomatik. So I think that would be better in comparison to using HPP. Yes. Okay, I agree with you on that part. All right. Thank you so much, Kelompok 3. I think you guys have answered a lot of my question. There's a flow chart. So yeah, that's good. So thank you very much. Okay. Kelompok 4, would you like to answer your question now?
Maybe I to try as the question, but before that, I apologize for our group's presentation being too general, because as it is somewhat difficult to find Indonesian food that use PF technology. Before we make this presentation, I try to find food, Indonesian food, but I just find how to use PF technology in milk, in meat, or in fruit juice, not specific Indonesian food like that.
It's okay. But maybe you could next time you could focus on the fruit juice processing.
What will the best food industry to adopt PF technology? What are the effects of PF on that food composition. If you read in our presentation,
Mhm.
uh, 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 we use about journal, how to use PEF technology for extraction cabai Jawa. Maybe like some general chili, but this chili is used for medicine, for traditional medicine.
Okay.
For the maybe I will to explain a little bit about how to use PEF technology in extraction of cabai Jawa. For the result of extraction in cabai Jawa, the component like pepperine or capsaicin is have in high component. If we use PEF technology, then we use a traditional technology because PEF technology is non-thermal physical, chemical, and organoleptic qualities of food products. But and this result is can have with low pulse because the gap of electrode is kecil itu, lebih kecil, jadi ya gitu energi listriknya itu lebih maksimal untuk mengekstraksi cabai Jawa gitu. Untuk about effect of PEF on that food, like in our presentation that PEF not cause change in the physical or chemical and organoleptic qualities of food products. And number two is, do you think PEF will be cheaper to be adopted in Indonesian food industry? If I read some journal, they said that operational cost for like technology PEF or ohmic heating or ultrasonic, it have more higher operational cost than the traditional method. But if we see for the effective, maybe we can choose another technologies like non-thermal technologies, because the qualities of food is more good than food with traditional method. Maybe for the answer from me is like that.
Okay, thank you so much, Nurul. I think just to reiterate what you have said, so cabai Jawa, you would like to extract the bioactive compound of it using pulse electric field, is it? Or to make it into other product?
Maybe can you repeat again, because
Okay.
jelek sinyalnya.
So you will use pulse electric field to extract the beneficial, the nutritional compound of cabai Jawa, or is it you would like to use pulse electric field to produce juice cabai Jawa tadi? Is it? Sorry. I'm trying to understand.
I will choose PEF for extraction cabai Jawa, for like extract cabai, not juice cabai.
Okay. All right. Okay, understand. Okay, because I'm not quite familiar with cabai Jawa, and when I Google cabai Jawa is a bit like black pepper. Does it taste like black pepper?
Yes, ma'am, like that.
Oh, I see. Okay, so basically you dry them first, and then you would grind them into powder. Then you would use it for jamu or something like that, is it?
Yes, ma'am, like that.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm not familiar with cabai Jawa. When you here in Malaysia, when you're talking about cabai, it always to my mind, chili comes to mind. So chili is cabai in Malaysia. So this is my first time looking at it. It looks
Or we can add the extract of cabai Jawa to make some jamu mixture.
okay.
Yeah.
But it would
So
taste a bit spicy, is it?
yes, it more spicy than
Okay.
other chili.
Dan ada chili.
But
Alright.
yeah, and memang diperuntukkan untuk medicine.
Untuk medicine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not,
You don't
yeah,
use it in your
not for
cooking.
yeah. Maybe hanya sedikit
Okay.
sebagian orang, but maybe we look for the medicine.
Them for medicine.
Yes.
So you consume cabai Jawa in jamu. For what actually?
Yes.
Untuk kuruskan badan ke?
Not for if we got influenza
Oh, okay.
and if we feeling meriang. Meriang is like
Feverish, like
yes,
demam. Okay.
yeah. Something like that for the medicine, and for influenza is good, and
Oh, it's
for
good.
short throat, yes, short throat, yeah,
Breath or
yes,
asthmatic. Okay.
yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. All right. Because if I were to look at the plants of cabai Jawa, it's a bit like mengkudu. Do you know mengkudu? Atau buah noni. Right.
Mengkudu,
Yes. Yeah. It looks a bit like that, except it's very long and small. Mengkudu are quite fat and short. All right. Okay. That's very interesting. I would like to thank Nurul for your answering question just now. And okay, I accept your answer when you mentioned that not a lot of food in Indonesia that can be treated with pulse electric field, which I kind of agree. But maybe next time you can focus on fruit juice, or maybe again look at into how the extraction of cabai Jawa. That would be very good, right? Okay. Okay, Dr. Farah, I leave it to you. It's already 4 o'clock. What you need to take pictures.
Okay. Maybe before that, I want to student. Maybe Naufal can give a testimony,
Oh,
little bit
yeah.
testimony
A little bit
for
testimony.
little bit testimony for
Okay, so
our
it's a little bit
meetings.
dark here.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
okay, Naufal. I can
hello.
still see you. All right, that's clear.
So thank you, Miss Nadia, for giving us some not some, it's a lot of thought about emerging like non-thermal, like ohmic, infrared, radio frequency, ohmic heating, and other else. And I think I can make like a lot of really lovely words. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, and maybe I will say like a little bit of fun fact or a little bit story. So last year, you're from UPM, right? Last year I had a summer course program with UPM, and I am some kind of a buddy or some kind of a facilitator for them.
Okay. All right.
And we get like a week of program together.
Okay.
We go around Bandung, and it was a really fun. It's for our faculty as well. So we learn and we travel around together.
Okay.
We learn about like coffee roasting, like tea, tea roaster,
Tea
and other
roasting.
and it was really interesting, and I really want to come to UPM like sometime in the future, you know.
Yes,
So
yes, definitely. Maybe perhaps I can arrange something with Ibu Asri and Ibu Farah also. So yeah, maybe some of you can come to UPM for about a week and we bring you around
okay.
yes, the food industry in Malaysia. That would be nice. I think that I will later on plan with Dr. Dr. Asri, yes.
Yeah, interesting idea.
Yes, interesting idea. Okay, Nafal, was that it?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Ibu Farah also for having me, and I thank Universitas Pajajaran for giving me this opportunity. Not that I only teach you guys, but I'm also learning something from you on the Indonesian food industry, the current situation there. And I think this is a very good opportunity for our countries to learn from each other. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I get to meet a lot of you, and yes, and learn from you guys too. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nadia. And maybe for me, senang sekali bisa bekerja sama kembali dengan Dr. Nadia
Yes,
setelah mungkin
definitely.
two or s- 2 semester ago we start to join praktisi mengajar, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
sampai
Sampai
sekarang
sekarang,
kita
yes.
masih yes.
Masih lagi
Dan
yes.
berharap ya betul. Jadi berharap kedepannya akan lebih, bahkan mungkin FYI ini untuk teman-teman, kalau Dr. Nadia itu sudah bisa menjadi pembimbing teman-teman gitu ya.
Yes,
Jadi
boleh.
ada beberapa mahasiswa Bu Asri yang pembimbing duanya itu ya, teman-teman.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nadia.
Thank
And
you.
before we end the meeting, maybe all we can
Take the pictures.
turn on, yes,
Yes.
turn on camera first. Okay. Wah, Novel mau kemana nih?
So
Mau ke kampus dulu.
hopefully I will see some of you guys again later on your final year project, right? Yes. Okay. Hopefully.
Yeah, right. Insyaallah.
Inshallah.
Okay. Okay. Dalam hitungan 3, 1, 2,
Yeah.
3. Okay, thank you so much,
All
Dr.
right.
Nadia,
Thank you,
and for our
everyone. Have a nice
student.
day. And I forgot to mention Selamat Hari Raya.
Oh, selamat Hari Raya juga.
Selamat Hari Raya.
Yeah.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah.
All right. Terima kasih, Ibu
Okay.
Farah.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Yeah, sama-sama.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.